I'm Lila, and the first thing you should know is that Los Angeles didn't feel like a city when I arrived. It felt like a hallway of mirrors. Every reflection looked a little like me, a little like what I wanted to be, and a lot like what somebody else wanted to buy. I stepped off a Greyhound at dawn with a rolling suitcase that wobbled on one bad wheel, a phone at 7% battery, and 2 addresses written in Sharpie on my forearm, a room for rent in Van Nuys, and a studio on Melrose that said they loved fresh faces. I was 19, and fresh sounded like a door that might open. People always ask where I'm from. Like Payne has a zip code. I'm from a cul-de-sac off a frontage road, from a house that smelled like dryer sheets and burned coffee, from a mother who kept her voice soft in the mornings and sharp at night. I'm from a school that taught abstinence and flood myths, from a youth group where the boys prayed with their eyes open. We weren't poor, not in the kind of way that gets a documentary. We were poor in time, poor in good apologies, poor in the belief that anything would change if you told the truth. My truth was simple and heavy. I wanted out. I wanted a stage that wasn't a cafeteria or the back of a pickup truck. I wanted to feel my life in neon, not linoleum. The room in Van Nuys turned out to be half of a garage behind a house where a lemon tree grew so aggressively it head-butted the fence. The landlord said, "No guests and no incense," and handed me a space heater that made the lights dim when I turned it on. The first night, I fell asleep to the hum of the 405 and woke up to the rattle of the recycling truck and a text from the studio. "Can you come at 1?" They put me in a white cyclorama and told me to look over my shoulder like I was leaving something behind. "Perfect," the photographer said. "Sad cells." I didn't feel sad. I felt literal, like I really was leaving something behind and didn't know if I should wave. Work came in the irregular rhythm of rain in Los Angeles. Nothing, then everything at once. A promo gig handing out energy drinks on Sunset. A boutique lookbook where they pinned a dress so tight to my spine I forgot my last name. A creative test shoot that was a warehouse with 1 fan, 1 mattress, and a fluorescent light that buzzed like a mosquito. The line between art and attention is thinner than dental floss here. I tripped over it daily. I learned the math of bus routes, the polite laugh that protects your throat, the way you can eat an entire dinner out of a Whole Foods sample tray if you move slowly and make eye contact with gratitude. Money was the part no one said out loud. The studio paid net 30, which is a cute way to say, try not to starve for a month. Rent wasn't cute. My mother sent a string of texts with links to job postings back home: bank teller, receptionist, nursery teacher. "You can breathe here," she wrote. I could breathe there, yes, but it felt like breathing inside a jar. In LA, even the bad air tasted like decision. So I picked up nights, first at a cocktail lounge in North Hollywood, then at a club in Koreatown with a velvet curtain and a neon sign that promised good behavior with a devil emoji. The owner apologized for the irony. "This is the part where people tilt their heads and lower their voices. How did you start dancing?" Like it's a riddle or a wound. The answer is arithmetic. Add rent plus groceries plus a past due notice minus a paycheck that did not show up. And the sum is a pair of platform heels, a stage name, and a body that learns to tell a longer story with a shorter skirt. The first night, my hands shook so hard, I dropped a stack of singles on the dressing room floor, and the older girl, Sable, with a tattoo of a moth the size of a paperback, said, "Baby, we all look like newborn deer at first. By Friday, you'll be Bambi with boundaries." Boundaries sounded like something you could wear under your clothes. On stage, the lights are loud. They hit your skin and invent weather. The song starts and your breath finds a beat like a coin finds a slot. You learn eye contact the way surfers learn tide charts, where to aim, when to hold, when to let it go. There is a version of me that lives under those lights who is not for sale and not for shame. She is made of angles and myth, a woman-shaped answer to the question, what if I was not afraid? I liked her. I worried about her. I promised her I'd walk us both home at the end of the shift. Home was the garage, the lemon tree, the space heater glow like a small sun at my feet. I'd count bills in the linty bottom of my backpack and text my mother pictures of the city without myself in them. Palm trees like antennae, a pink sky over a strip mall, the Hollywood sign as if it were a sentence that never needed a period. She'd reply with heart emojis and weather updates. We were both editing. I didn't tell her about the guy who waited by the employee door and said my real name with a question mark on it. I didn't tell her how the bouncer taught me to keep my keys between my fingers like teeth. I told her I was safe, which is a kind of prayer. LA is a study in agreeing to things. You agree to traffic, and then you agree to the way time melts inside it. You agree to promises that live in fonts. You agree to the understanding that nothing is forever. Not the job, not the apartment, not the version of yourself you loved last week. You agree to start again. I started again a lot. New hair, new set list, new nuance in the way I said my name, Lila with the L held a half-second longer, a ribbon unspooling. I learned how to dance in shoes that felt like architecture. I learned how to leave a room as if I had somewhere better to be, even when I didn't. There were good nights, the kind you frame in your mind. A woman at the rail who tipped like she was feeding pigeons, giggling and kind. A DJ who played my song twice in a row because you were in a story and I didn't want to end it yet. There were bad nights that felt like you'd been erased in chalk. There were nights that were just nights, routine and unremarkable, proof that even the dramatic can become domestic with repetition. Somewhere in there, I bought a fan for the garage and a real lock for the door. Progress is sometimes buying something that makes air move. People think the city changes you overnight. It doesn't. It sands you. I noticed it first in my voice, how it lowered a little, how my laughter started to arrive with an echo. I noticed it in my hunger. I wanted less sweetness, more salt. I noticed it in the mirror, the baby fat leaving my cheeks like a gentle betrayal. I started carrying cash in 3 places. I started taking my makeup off with coconut oil, the way Sable taught me, because glitter will outlive us all if you let it. I started writing lists on my phone at 3 a.m. Things I will not do. Things I will only do once. Things that feel like me. I revised them often. If you ask me why I stayed, I will say, because the nights stitched themselves into something I could wear. Because the city kept answering when I called, even if the answer was, try again. Because I met pieces of myself on stage that I'd been told were dangerous and found them capable instead. Because leaving would have meant explaining, and I was tired of translating a life into a language that made other people comfortable. So this is the beginning, not the confession and not the defense. I am Lila. I live in Los Angeles. I dance for rent, and for the kind of control you only feel when the beat drops and your body remembers the choreography you wrote with your own fear. I am not a cautionary tale and I am not a miracle. I am a person making a life out of motion, pausing sometimes to count lemons on a tree that doesn't understand restraint, to breathe in the freeway's hot wind, to feel the Mirror Hall city reflect me back. Not perfect, not permanent, but undeniably here. By the time I turned 20, the club felt less like a place I worked and more like a second skin, warm, glittered, and slightly dangerous if you wore it too long. The red velvet walls smelled of perfume, spilled whiskey, and ambition. Every night began the same way. Girls filing in through the back alley, heels clattering like a warning bell, the faint hum of the DJ testing the bass. Someone would say, "You look tired, babe," which was stripper code for "put on more lipstick." My name on the schedule, Lila. Stage 2, always made my stomach flutter, not with fear, but with a kind of gravity. The lights were unforgiving and honest. They showed everything you were and everything you tried to hide. The regulars had names like movie extras, Rick, Tony, DeMarco, but they all blurred into one orbit of voices saying, "You're beautiful," like it was a currency. Some meant it. Most didn't. I learned to smile like it didn't matter either way. The nights stretched into something elastic. One song became 3, one drink became 5, and before I knew it, it was 3 a.m., and I was walking home with my heels dangling from my fingers. Los Angeles at that hour is another planet. Empty freeways, coyotes pacing the edges of streetlights, taco stands still open like small miracles. I liked the quiet best, the way the city exhaled after pretending all day. Sometimes I'd pass other dancers on their way home, nodding at each other like soldiers leaving a battlefield no one else believed existed. Sable became my shadow, my mentor, my softest warning. She was 35, sharp as eyeliner, always chewing gum like she was negotiating with God. She told me rules that never appeared in employee handbooks. Never go home with a customer. Don't date the DJ. Keep your cash in your boot, not your bag. And always, always watch the girl beside you. She said it like a mantra. I didn't know yet how many girls disappeared between paydays. There were good customers, too. Quiet men who tipped without touching. Women who came in for birthdays and clapped too hard. Couples who asked me how long I'd been performing, as if I were ballet trained. Sometimes they'd say things like, "You must love this," and I'd nod, because the truth was too tangled to explain. I did love parts of it. The control, the rhythm, the small rebellion of turning objectification into choreography. But there were nights when it hollowed me out, left me standing under the shower feeling like glitter in the drain, shiny, spent, impossible to clean completely. Outside the club, I began building a different version of myself. I bought a cheap digital camera and started taking photos of the girls backstage, their hands fixing straps, their faces half lit by the vanity bulbs. I wanted to catch the quiet before the music swallowed us. One night, Sable saw me snapping shots and said, "You've got an eye, kid. Maybe you should start pointing it somewhere better than here." I didn't know what better meant, but I started keeping a folder on my laptop labeled Possible Futures. Rent went up, of course. Everything in LA does. I moved out of the garage and into a studio in East Hollywood with a girl named Ivy who sold vintage clothes online and called everything vibe-coded. We shared ramen, incense, and late-night panic about the future. She never judged what I did. She called it survival performance. That phrase stuck to me. It sounded poetic, almost dignified. The club became predictable until it didn't. One night, a man walked in wearing a gray suit that looked too clean for the room. He wasn't loud, didn't drink much, didn't stare too long. When I danced near his table, he didn't smile or throw money. He just watched, steady, like he was trying to memorize something. Later at the bar, he said, "You look like you're somewhere else." I laughed it off, but he wasn't wrong. I was always half somewhere else. The lemon tree garage, the small town house I'd fled, the version of me that still thought neon meant safety. He told me he worked in film. Everyone in Los Angeles works in film, or says they do, but his eyes were too tired to be lying for fun. He said he was casting a small art project, nothing explicit, just movement and light. I took his card and tucked it behind my ID. For 3 days, I didn't call. Then rent reminded me who I was, and I did. The shoot was in a downtown loft that smelled like dust and possibility. He kept his distance, gave directions softly. Move like you're underwater. Look toward the window like someone you love just left. For once, I didn't feel like I was being watched. I felt like I was being seen. When it ended, he said, "You're good at this." I didn't know whether he meant the acting or the surviving. After that, I began to think about control differently. On stage, control was about the illusion of choice, choosing how to smile, how to touch, how to say no without breaking the spell. But behind a camera, control was quieter. It was about composition, framing, what to leave out. I liked that kind of power better. Still, nights at the club paid the bills, and the camera didn't. I kept dancing. I kept learning. There's an honesty in the way money lands on a stage. It tells you exactly what you're worth in that moment, and nothing more. Some nights it felt empowering. Other nights, it felt like math I didn't want to do. I started writing again, too. Small paragraphs in my notes app, half poems, half diary. Things like, maybe the opposite of shame is detail, or every city is just a mirror pretending to be a window. Sometimes I'd read them aloud while brushing my teeth, testing how my voice sounded when it wasn't for sale. One dawn, walking home, I passed a mural that said, "You are exactly where you need to be." It was painted over graffiti and half peeling. I took a picture anyway. Maybe the mural was wrong, or maybe it was right, but only for that exact second, the fragile in-between before the sun came up, when LA looked almost honest. That was the night I decided I didn't just want to survive the city. I wanted to rewrite the way it looked at me. I didn't know how yet, but I felt the first spark of it, the same way you feel the bass before the song starts. Lila sat on the edge of a stranger's couch, her fingers nervously playing with a silver ring she'd found at a thrift store 2 years ago. The room was filled with dim orange light, filtered through blinds that hadn't been dusted in years. A heavy silence hung between her and the man sitting across from her. A producer, or at least that's what he called himself. He wasn't what she expected. No slick suit, no Hollywood charm, just a tired face and an iPhone that buzzed every few seconds. "You have potential," he told her. "Not just for modeling, for film." The word film lingered in the air like perfume, alluring, dangerous, and familiar. She had heard it before, whispered by strangers who promised fame for the price of innocence. Lila smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "What kind of film?" she asked, even though she already knew. He tilted his head, studying her like a sculpture. "The kind that pays," he said softly. Money. That word always changed the conversation. Rent was late again. Her roommate had moved out without notice, and her phone bill was stacked with reminders. She felt cornered by numbers she couldn't escape. Every decision she made seemed to lead back to survival, a word that had become her entire existence. He showed her clips on his phone, muted videos of girls laughing, acting, pretending. "It's art," he said. "You'd be surprised how many start this way and make something of themselves." Lila nodded, her heartbeat louder than his words. She thought of her mother in Arizona, still believing her daughter was chasing movie auditions. The first time she stepped in front of a camera, it felt unreal, like she was watching herself from the outside. The lights were too bright, the room too small, and everyone was pretending that what they were doing was perfectly normal. She followed directions, smiled when told, and let go of everything that once made her feel safe. That night, when it was over, she stood in the bathroom staring at the mirror. Her lipstick had smeared, her hair stuck to her skin, and her eyes looked older, not tired, just distant. She tried to tell herself it was just work. Everyone worked for something. She repeated that until it sounded like a prayer. Days turned into weeks. One video became 2, then 3. Each time it got easier to detach. The camera stopped feeling intrusive. It became part of her, an unblinking witness. She learned how to pose, how to fake emotion, how to cry without tears. She became a character that didn't exist outside of those sets. Confident, seductive, untouchable. But when the cameras stopped rolling, silence hit harder. She'd lie awake at night, scrolling through her messages, men offering money, gifts, travel. Her profile grew, followers multiplied, and somewhere in that digital applause, she felt more invisible than ever. One evening, after a shoot in North Hollywood, she met another girl, older, sharper, wearing an expensive coat and a knowing smile. "You're new," the woman said. "You'll learn fast, but just remember, they'll love you until you stop making them money." That sentence stayed with Lila. Every deal, every fake compliment, every text from men who thought they owned her, it all sounded different after that. Still, she couldn't stop. The money was steady, the escape constant. The girl who once dreamed of acting now played a role too real to audition for. She told herself it was temporary, just until she saved enough to start over. But deep down she knew, every time she stepped on set, she left a piece of herself behind. And that night, as she walked home past neon lights and broken billboards, she realized she didn't even remember what she was saving for anymore. Lila woke to the hum of the city outside her window, that restless, electric noise that never really stopped in Los Angeles. The blinds were half open, letting in pale light that carved thin lines across her skin. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The hotel rooms all looked the same now, neutral, impersonal, like they were designed for people who didn't plan to stay. She rolled onto her side and caught her reflection in the mirror across the room. It startled her. The woman staring back wasn't the girl who came to California chasing light. Her face was flawless, almost too much so, polished by foundation and fatigue. Her eyes were still beautiful, but they looked hollow, like they'd learned too much about pretending. She sat up slowly, reaching for the glass of water on the nightstand. The makeup from last night had smudged around her eyes, creating a shadowed frame that looked deliberate, almost cinematic. She studied it for a long time. Maybe this is what survival looks like, she thought. Beautiful and broken in equal measure. Her phone buzzed with another text from the agency. New client. Pays double. Tonight. She didn't reply right away. Instead, she stared at the message until the words blurred. The money was good. It was always good. But she felt something inside her thinning each time she said yes. She walked into the bathroom, the tiles cold beneath her feet. The fluorescent light flickered once before stabilizing. She looked in the mirror again, really looked this time. Without makeup, without the practiced smile, her face seemed younger, almost innocent. It was strange, the duality of it all. The woman she became at night and the girl she still was underneath. She whispered to her reflection, "You're still in there." The words felt small, fragile. She wasn't sure she believed them. Later that afternoon, she wandered down Sunset Boulevard, sunglasses on, hair tied up in a messy knot. The world around her was moving fast, cars, conversations, laughter, and she felt like she was standing still inside a slow-motion reel. She passed a cafe window and caught her reflection again. The camera in her mind framed the shot perfectly, a lonely woman outside a world she no longer recognized. A young couple sat inside, laughing over iced coffee. The girl's head rested on the boy's shoulder, and for a second, Lila forgot to breathe. She used to dream of that, something simple, safe, but dreams cost time, and she'd traded all of hers for survival. That night, back in her apartment, she turned off the lights and sat by the window. The city glowed below, a sea of artificial stars. Somewhere, music drifted up from a car stereo, something slow and nostalgic. It made her think of home. Not a place, but a feeling. Before the cameras, before the deals, before the masks. She pulled out an old notebook from her bag, pages filled with sketches and lines of poetry she used to write when she was still hopeful. Her handwriting looked foreign now. On one page, a quote stood out, "You can't build a new life with borrowed pieces of someone else's dream." She traced the words with her finger. Somewhere along the way, she had become everyone else's fantasy, never her own. When her phone buzzed again, she silenced it. For the first time in months, she didn't rush to reply. She let the room stay quiet. She let herself breathe. In the mirror, her reflection was faint in the darkness, barely visible, and yet, for the first time, it didn't look like a stranger. The night was heavy with heat, the kind that makes the city feel like it's breathing against your skin. Lila stood on her balcony, barefoot, a cigarette burning between her fingers. The skyline pulsed with light, towers blinking, traffic flowing, the heartbeat of Los Angeles echoing below her. It had been 3 days since she'd answered a call. The agency had stopped texting. Even her usual clients, the ones who treated her like an accessory to their loneliness, had gone quiet. For the first time in years, silence surrounded her, and it terrified her more than any man ever had. She stubbed the cigarette out on the railing, the ember falling like a dying star. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the glass door behind her. Messy hair, oversized shirt, eyes that looked far too old for 30. She turned away from it. The mirror had been following her for weeks now, in shop windows, car doors, even the surface of her coffee. It wasn't just a reflection anymore. It was a confrontation. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of vanilla and stale perfume. The sheets on the bed were still tangled from the last night she worked, a memory she didn't want but couldn't quite erase. On the dresser, her old notebook lay open, the same line staring up at her. "You can't build a new life with borrowed pieces of someone else's dream." She read it again and again until the words blurred. Then she closed the notebook gently, as if sealing away a version of herself that no longer fit. The knock at the door was soft, hesitant. For a second her heart jumped, an instinct, an echo of her old rhythm. But when she opened it, it wasn't a client. It was her friend Maya, the only person who'd known her before Lila became a name whispered in luxury hotels. Maya looked tired, eyes lined with worry. "You disappeared," she said. "I thought you were—" "I know," Lila interrupted, her voice low. "I just needed to stop." Maya stepped inside, scanning the room. "Stop what? The work?" "The pretending." They sat together on the couch, the air thick with unspoken things. Outside, sirens wailed faintly, a reminder that the city was always watching, always hungry. You could leave, Maya said after a while. Go back home. Start over. Home. The word felt both impossible and magnetic. I don't even know where that is anymore, Lila whispered. Maya smiled sadly. Maybe that's the point. Maybe you have to build it. Later that night, after Maya left, Lila sat on the floor with her back against the wall. The city hummed on the other side of the glass, indifferent. She thought of the girl she'd been, the one who arrived here with dreams of lights and cameras, believing she could control the story. She thought of every compromise, every yes that carved another piece away. Her phone lit up again, one final message from the agency. Client wants exclusivity. Big money, one night. She stared at it for a long time. The screen glowed in her hand like a small, cruel sun. She imagined the hotel room, the scent of champagne, the empty words. Then she imagined something else. A morning without guilt. A day without pretending. Slowly, deliberately, she powered the phone off. For a long time, she just sat there in the dark, listening to her own heartbeat. It was faint but steady, like a rhythm she could still dance to. She got up, walked to the balcony again, and let the warm air touch her face. Below her, Los Angeles shimmered, 1,000 glittering lies. But somewhere beyond that glow, beyond the noise and the money and the masks, she felt the faint outline of something real. Maybe it wasn't redemption. Maybe it was just the first step toward being human again, she whispered into the night. Half to herself, half to the city that had both made and broken her. Tomorrow, I start over. The wind caught her words, scattering them like ash. And for the first time in years, she didn't chase after them. She simply watched them drift away. Free.